My public connection therapy session is done, as is my personal connection therapy session. And today I focused, for my 15 minutes of fame, for me, I focused on, first let me mention, I forgot to mention in the last one, these sessions are in no way an encouragement for people to ingest their if for those who do use cannabis, because it's welcome to those who do and don't, but it's not to encourage those of you who use cannabis to smoke right now. You do what you want to, but I don't encourage ingestion by smoking right now. Now, if it was my only means of ingestion, you can best believe I would be smoking. So I'm not telling you what not to do, but to keep your system uninhibited. How am I cold right now? I mean, how am I hot right now? I was freezing a minute ago. Now, you know, unless you haven't already seen the video, that I have created a mechanism. You can actually see the homemade whip right here. I actually created my own mechanism, which I feel like, from my experience, is cleaner than both regular smoking and vaping. Yeah, I said it. You don't want to combust anything right now with the pandemic happening. But I hadn't even used my setup since the pandemic took control of the whole nation. But on Earth Day weekend, I definitely pulled out my contraption and used it and enjoyed it. Turns out I missed it very much. But and I don't have any problems with it because I know most of you don't realize, along with glaucoma, asthma was also one of the first ailments treated with cannabis. It actually relaxes opens and relaxes your. Don't hold me to that, because you ain't finna get COVID and die and blame me because I said it was okay. Because the first thing I said was don't be smoking. But do what you want to, because you grown. But don't be smoking right now, okay? This is not regular smoking, what I'm doing right here. It's not even regular vaping. So I'm still taking precautions as I use this. I love that sound. And I love the smell. Oh, it smells wonderful. Isn't that crazy? Colonization, boy. You know, when you're a kid, somebody ran over a skunk outside. You're like, ew, ew, ew. And now it can be an actual skunk that got ran over. And you smell it and you're like, hold up. Who out here getting live? Who out here getting live? You know something I've also noticed? I'm going to throw this in here because this is Patreon. This is what we do. I noticed that my CBD, you know what? That's a different video. I was gonna walk you through how my CBD that doesn't get you high seem to become more potent under certain circumstances. But that's also true for my contraption as well. So I wonder if that had something to do with the increased potency. Again, another video. But my 15 minutes of fame for myself today was focused on triggers and acceptance. I started to say tolerance, but people are using the word tolerance to justify enabling fuckery. So, you know, what they did was, you know how people say we took the N-word and made it powerful? Well, I think that people took the word tolerance and using it to combat bigotry and activism against bigotry. But what that tolerance morphed into was an enabling of said bigotry, because now tolerance, you have to be tolerant of everything. No, you don't. Because just by saying that, you're being intolerant of intolerance. So you're not tolerating the intolerance. Make it make sense. But again, there are extremes in everything, and that's one of our biggest issues with people that even have good intentions, is no moral balance. But again, I digress. But I hope it was still valuable somehow. But My focus is on triggers and acceptance. Oh, that's still valid. I was explaining why I chose to use the word acceptance, rather than tolerance. Triggers and tolerance. Well, I have to go at a different angle. Again, this is a personal practice. So I have to go at a different angle. I don't get triggered like most colonized Americans. I'm not as easily triggered, and the reason why is because unlike people that go around quoting Maya and Oprah and saying when someone shows you who they are, believe them, I actually do believe people when they show me who they are. So I'm not as easily triggered. You know, when people post something and they're like, oh, I can't believe this, or the president is a perfect example. People post something that he did or said, and everybody's up in arms about it. Or they show something that a racist or nigger, because racists are niggas, okay? They are. They're the OG niggas, in fact. So they post something that a racist or nigger did, and everybody's up in arms. And in most cases, I am here for the exposure of such fuckery, right? But at the end of the day, once they get through exposing that shit, nobody does anything, nobody says anything, and no action is taken against the racist. So how is that triggering every time? Every time when somebody posts another, again, that's a perfect example. So the president suggested a prescription medication. The current president, suggested a prescription medication to fight the pandemic in order to massacre more of the citizens. And when he suggests the medication, there's not a whole lot of uproar. But when the medication starts to massacre people, then there's uproar. For me, not so much, because at this stage, why do we keep looking at them and going, oh, they're stupid for believing what he said? We're beyond that. We already know who he is, and we already know who the people who trust him are. We know who the people that trusted him for the first 3 years of his we know who the people are who trusted him before he campaigned. Bottom line is, unlike most Americans, I'm not easily triggered by something that is just shown to me. Because the examples I just gave were number two. Number one, nothing that is shown to us from the American leaders can be trusted. So again, I'm very difficult to trigger. So what are your triggers that you're going to focus on for your 15 minutes of fame, you ask? Well, my triggers are the unfathomable numbers of people who are triggered by those orchestrated distractions. And that's what triggers me. Like, while everybody's like, I can't believe he did that, I'm in the comments looking at everybody who's like, oh my God, I can't believe he did that. Comment after comment after comment. He's so vile. I can't believe he did this. All these people are dying. Oh yeah. And so I'm looking at everyone just eating it all up, basically, and spitting it out in such a way that they actually want them to. It was the goal. That was the point. And so when I see everyone triggered, that triggers me. And not in an aggressive way, but in a laid back way, but one that is accepting that it is indeed what it is. The American society is what it is. And so I can't be triggered by, for example, when something happens in Florida, we have the attitude that, oh, that's just Florida-ing. So with me, you could use that same scenario and say that I say, oh, well, that's just Americaning. And that is okay. But that's not okay for me to be okay with that. You know, what am I going to do about it? Because nobody else is. And that's what triggers me, the realization that nobody else is. And the realization that even if those of us who are cognizant and not fully colonized got together, there's so few of us that we would be overwhelmed by the clusterfuck of ignorance saturating humanity here. So what do? We retreat into our personal corners and love who we love strong and hard and immediately, because we realize time is limited and we're not going anywhere because our family's here. That was how they planned it. So I think that since people are not going to revolt, people are not going to actively resist in a way that is going to change anything anyway. There are going to be people who resist. Hell, people feel like not going back to work when he says to go back to work is resistance, but that's not resistance. That's temporary, because we're going to reach a point where see? See? I almost got triggered. I almost got triggered by the typical general overall American response or lack thereof. And as an individual, I can't do that. But in the meantime, it amounts to us waiting until it's our turn to die in this existence. So I really want to make the most of whatever is left of it and influence others in a constructive way so they can live their best lives for however long it lasts in this bitch. Because I don't trigger like the typical American, I have to focus on my brand of acceptance of what is here now in this society. And that's okay, because in magnifying our wellness, our physical and mental, psychological, biological wellness, we will thrive in it. We will thrive in it. And at the end of the day, triggers have a direct detrimental effect on one's physical health, mental, and therefore physical health. So in putting my set intentions to action, I have to continue to, because I do it, but I have to continue to find a balance of if and when I even want to address particular triggers, because it's inevitable that I am triggered every time I realize the consensus, the mental consensus of a colonized society steeped in cognitive dissonance. You know, you've heard me say that a million times. But in doing so, I need to not get riled up about it. And so, in fact, I often find corners of humor to settle myself in that moment of triggering. You know, I'll look at everyone and I'll just be like, wow, and do and say nothing. Because what are you going to do? I'm not here changing minds. There's no more time for that. Time's up. We have to better ourselves and inspire people we care about to want to better themselves, because some of them don't. Or some of the idea of what's better in themselves is not necessarily. For example, you would think that a pro-black group would be uplifting of the only black man that was even credible, morally credible enough to be the president of the United States. He was. We had him there. He was there. And even then, supremacy was able to encourage a large population of pro-black people, allegedly pro-black people, to stab him in the back. And then now you hear people, so that's another, let me just throw that in there real quick. So that's another thing I get triggered by. I get triggered by someone saying, oh, we want President Obama back. No, you don't. No, you don't. Because you weren't willing to pump that nigga's brakes that was talking shit about him. You see what I'm saying? And I'm not saying he was perfect, because there was some bullshit that he did that I have no doubt that he had to do for one reason or another to soften another blow that might have been coming. But he was calculated even in his goodness and his genuineness. And you can best believe a couple of the things that he did that left us jeopardized as a people is no more than he wanted to do to jeopardize his own family. Whatever he did in that capacity, he had to do. And I'm referring to the couple of bullshit things he did, because he did a couple of bullshit things. But overall, he's the best. He was the best man for the job, black, white, orange, or purple. And I use that information to pay attention to who people are when I hear people who are still dogging him. And when I hear people that are saying we want him back. And if they are people whose mouths were shut when he was being crucified as he led. So anyway, but again, I wonder if it seems like that shows that I haven't improved much in terms of being triggered by our collective willful victimization. Because as I have said, for all the years that he has been president, and the enabling of his antics amounts to little more than us volunteering to walk willfully into the gas chambers. Yeah, that was a concentration camp reference. I've been talking about the Great Depression that we're in. That even with loss of employment, except for essential workers, people are still denying we're in. We're talking about bouncing back from economy suicide with a $1,200 check. See what I did there? See how that became hilarious? That's how I handle those triggers now. Because I believe a country when it shows me what she is. I believe all bitches that show their ass. Ooh, Teddy said he want to rub my back when I said sore. He must have been listening to me yesterday, girl. See you tomorrow.